He thinks he's fine without you. At first, he feels free, like he's made the right choice. He convinces himself he doesn't need you, that he's better off. And maybe, for a while, he is distracted enough to believe it. But then it happens. The silence you left behind starts to get louder. The space you used to fill feels colder. He begins to notice the little things, the absence of your energy, your laughter, your presence that made him feel alive in ways he didn't even understand at the time. At first, his ego tells him to stay strong, to not reach out, but cracks begin to form. Late at night, he scrolls through his phone, and your name catches his eye. He wonders if he made a mistake. And as he searches for you in other people, he realizes no one compares. But here's the twist. By the time he finally understands your worth, you've already evolved. You're no longer waiting. You've become stronger, happier, and untouchable. He thought he could come back when he was ready. But now, he's about to find out what it feels like to lose a woman who outgrew the version of herself he once knew. You know what's fascinating? When someone decides to walk away from you, they almost always tell themselves the same story. I'll be fine without her. They convince themselves that they're in control, that they're making the right choice. And for a while, they even start believing it. At first, it's easy for them to fill their time. Maybe they distract themselves with work, with friends, or with mindless scrolling. They might even feel a sense of relief. After all, they don't have to deal with the vulnerability of being emotionally open, or the responsibility of showing up for someone else. It feels lighter at first. But here's what happens. That feeling doesn't last, because while they're caught up convincing themselves they're fine, they're blind to the subtle ways your presence was shaping their life. They don't realize the energy you brought into the room. They don't realize how deeply they relied on the comfort of knowing someone had their back, the encouragement in your voice, or the way your laughter filled up the silence. They think they've freed themselves from responsibility, but what they've actually done is removed the very thing that gave their life a layer of meaning they weren't even conscious of. And in the beginning, they won't notice. It's easy not to notice when they're surrounded by noise and distractions, but there always comes a moment when the noise fades, the parties end, the texts slow down, the distractions lose their novelty. And suddenly, in the quiet, they're left alone with themselves. It's in that quiet where they start to realize they've lost something. At first, they can't even name it. They just feel it as this hollow ache, like something is missing, but they can't put their finger on what. That's when they start replaying moments in their head. That Sunday afternoon when you brought over their favorite snack without asking, the way you looked to them when they were telling you about their big plans, the way you believed in them even when they didn't believe in themselves. And suddenly it clicks. You weren't just another person in their life. You weren't just company. You were connection. You were safety. You were energy. Now, here's the irony. They thought they'd be fine without you because they were so used to taking for granted what you brought. And they mistook your presence as a given. They assumed you'd always be there, giving and giving, because that's just who you are. So when they let you go, they thought they were letting go of someone who was optional. What they're discovering now is that you weren't optional at all. You were rare. And this is the part they didn't see coming. When they left, they assumed you'd be waiting. They assumed that if they ever changed their mind, they could just pick up the phone and find you exactly where they left you. But what they didn't count on was the way you've grown in their absence. They didn't count on you realizing your own worth, building your own life, and discovering You don't need someone who couldn't see your value the first time around. It's easy to think you're losing when someone pulls away. Easy to feel like they're fine and you're the one hurting. But the truth is, people often don't feel the loss until much later. They don't feel the absence until they've had enough space to realize what life looks like without you in it. And when they do, it hits them like a wave. That moment isn't about revenge. It's not about proving a point. It's about understanding that people have to feel the consequence of losing you to fully understand what you meant to them. You don't need to convince them. The universe has a way of making people sit with their decisions. And trust me, when the illusion of independence fades, reality rushes in. And in that reality, they see it clearly for the first time. You weren't the one who lost. They were. There's a moment where you've said everything you can say. You've expressed how you feel. You've tried to meet him halfway, and maybe even more than halfway. You've extended grace. You've been patient. And still, it feels like he's not listening, or worse, like he doesn't care. That's when the temptation creeps in to try harder, to call, to text, to remind him of what you had, to shake him into seeing what he's losing. You've decided that no harm has been done. And the second. But here's the truth. Words will never have the power that silence has. Your silence is the loudest message you'll ever send. When you stop reaching out, you stop feeding his ego. You stop giving him the comfort of knowing you're there, waiting in the wings. Suddenly, the power dynamic shifts. He's no longer the one deciding if he wants you in his life. Now he's left with the question, why isn't she trying anymore? At first, he might not notice. He'll scroll through his phone, see no messages from you, and tell himself you've probably given up. That will stroke his ego. It'll feel like he's in control, but give it time because it won't last. Days will pass and the quiet will grow heavier. Where there was once a flurry of your words, your care, your attention, now there's nothing. And that nothing will get louder every single day. He'll begin to realize that he doesn't have you to fall back on anymore. That safety net of knowing you'll always be there to check in, to apologize first, to ask how he's doing even when he hasn't earned it, that's gone. It's in this silence that he begins to feel the difference between someone who was just around and someone who was truly invested in him. He might try to distract himself, but the distractions will be shallow. He'll scroll endlessly on his phone, hang out with friends, maybe even talk to other women, trying to fill the void you left. But here's what happens every time. When the noise dies down, he's still left with the same question. Why does it feel emptier without her? Silence forces him to sit with himself. That's uncomfortable for most people. It's especially uncomfortable for someone who thought they could walk away and not look back. Because silence leaves him no one else to blame, no one else to argue with, no one else to resist. It leaves only him and the reality he's created. He starts to remember your laugh, the way you encouraged him when he doubted himself, the way you brought lightness to his heavy days. These aren't just memories anymore. They become cravings he doesn't know how to satisfy because you're no longer there to provide them. Even though you aren't really there to provide them, you see, the mistake many people make is thinking they can talk someone into valuing them, that if they just say the right words, send the right text, or explain things one more time, suddenly the other person will wake up and get it. But if he doesn't value you when you're there, your words won't change that. Silence, on the other hand, makes him feel the loss in a way no speech ever could. When you stop showing up, you stop making life comfortable for him, and people only grow or reflect when they're uncomfortable. That's when he'll begin to ask himself, did I underestimate her? Did I mistake her kindness for weakness? Was I wrong to think she'd always be there? And here's the thing, by the time he reaches out, if he does, you're not the same person anymore. You've spent that time away from him, investing in yourself, building a life that doesn't revolve around whether he chooses you or not. You've started to realize that his silence was never as powerful as your own. The greatest gift you can give yourself is the space to step back and let him feel your absence. Because if your presence didn't move him, your absence just might. You know what's fascinating? In the beginning, he's not even fighting his emotions. He's fighting his ego. That's the part of him that tells him he's fine, that you were never that important, that he can live his life without even thinking about you. His pride becomes his armor. He walks around with this narrative in his head that says, I don't miss her. I don't need her. I'm good. And for a while, he believes it, or at least he tries to. But what happens over time is that this armor he's wearing starts to crack, because the ego is a fragile thing. It's loud, it's defensive, it's stubborn, but it's also deeply insecure. It relies on stories he tells himself to feel safe, to feel strong, to feel like he's winning. So in the early days, when he's convincing himself he doesn't care, he might even distract himself with other people or throw himself into his work or his hobbies just to prove to himself how unaffected he is. He wants to win this invisible game where the person who cares less holds all the power. But let me tell you what happens in those quiet moments, the ones no one else sees. When the noise of his distractions fades and there's nothing left to do but sit with himself, that's when the first crack appears. That's when he remembers the way you looked at him in a moment of vulnerability, when you made him feel like he was enough without even trying. He remembers the conversations where you challenged him, not to hurt him, but to help him grow. He remembers the little ways you made his world lighter without demanding anything in return. First, he tries to suppress those thoughts. It doesn't matter, he tells himself. She's replaceable. There are plenty of other people out there. But deep down, something isn't sitting right. And the more he tries to shove those memories away, the more persistent they become. Because here's the thing about connection. It doesn't just disappear because his pride says so. That's why his ego begins to lose its grip. And when it does, he starts questioning himself. Maybe he wasn't as indifferent as he thought. Maybe he wasn't as invincible as he believed. He starts to realize that losing you wasn't a win for his independence. It was a loss he's only now beginning to understand. This is the moment where his heart finally enters the conversation. At first, it was just his pride talking. His heart was quiet, waiting in the background. But when the ego falters, the heart says, do you remember what it felt like to be cared for? To feel understood? To know someone had your back in a way no one else did? That's when he starts to feel the weight of what's gone. And you know what's ironic? The same pride that kept him from appreciating you fully when you were there is now the thing keeping him from reaching out. Because now he has to face the truth. You didn't leave because you didn't care. You didn't pull away because you weren't invested. You walked away because you refused to stay where you weren't valued. That realization stings in a way he never saw coming. And it's not just about missing you. It's about facing his own failure to see your worth when he had the chance. It's about realizing that the door he thought he could come back to any time might not even be there anymore. This is where the shift happens. His thoughts go from, I'm fine without her, to, what if she's fine without me? That's the question that keeps him up at night. That's the thought that sends him scrolling through old messages, revisiting moments, and wondering if there's still a way back. But here's the beautiful part about all of this. You didn't have to force any of it. You didn't have to beg or plead or convince him of your value. Your absence did the work for you. And now he's left with the reality he tried so hard to avoid. At first, he thought you were replaceable. Now he knows the truth. You weren't. You never were. And no matter how hard he tries to fill the space you left, nothing feels the same. Because people don't regret losing someone they didn't value. They regret losing someone who made them feel something they can't find again. That is the power of something in your power. If you let someone lose, who very well may make you lose, you have to be the same for them, and the same for them. You have to be the same for them, and the same for them. You have to be the same for them, and the same for them. They feel misunderstood, misread, and misunderstood, once or twice, for their own good. It's funny how people assume that just because they're physically in someone's life, they're leaving an impact. You could call someone every day, spend hours with them, text them good morning and good night, and still leave no real imprint. But the opposite is also true. You could disappear, remove yourself completely, and yet your emotional presence lingers in their life like a song they can't get out of their head. That's the thing most people don't realize. Emotional impact always outweighs physical presence. When you pull back, when you stop pouring energy into someone who took it for granted, there's this shift they can't quite name at first. He might still think he's fine without you because the routine of his days hasn't changed yet. He gets up, goes to work, sees his friends, and it feels normal. But there's a difference between normal and fulfilled. There's a subtle emptiness he can't explain. He won't notice it the first day or even the first week, but over time, it creeps in, like a shadow stretching across his life. Because what he's starting to realize is that you weren't just someone who filled space. You weren't just there. You were the one who made things feel brighter, easier, warmer. You were the person who made him feel understood in ways that no one else could. And when you take that away, not in a dramatic, angry way, but in a calm, self-respecting way, it hits differently. He might not say it out loud. His pride will keep him silent. But deep down, he knows something important has gone missing. You see, people don't miss you because you text them first or because you're available when they need you. They miss the way you made them feel. They miss the energy you brought into their life, the way you challenged them, supported them, or even just made the mundane moments fun. And when you step back, it forces them to sit with themselves in a way they're not used to. They're left with their own thoughts, their own insecurities, and they start noticing that no one else gives them that same emotional experience. At first, he might try to replace it. He'll distract himself, maybe with work, with friends, with dating apps. He'll tell himself he's moving on, that he's fine. But here's the truth. You can't replace emotional resonance with surface-level distractions. He can meet other people, but sooner or later, he'll feel the difference. He'll feel the gap between what's comfortable and what's meaningful. And that's when it hits him, that the situation he's in will no longer be honorable and what's meaningful. And that's when it hits him. That's when he starts scrolling through your old messages, replaying memories, and wondering why nothing feels the same anymore. And here's the part he never saw coming. While he's busy realizing what he lost, you've already started to evolve. You're not waiting by the phone. You're not stuck in the same place emotionally. You've grown stronger, clearer about what you deserve. So even if he does come back, he's not meeting the same version of you. He's meeting a woman who has raised her standards, someone who now understands her own value in a way she didn't before. That's the power of emotional impact. It doesn't just stay in their mind, it stays in their heart. It makes them realize that no amount of physical proximity can make up for what they feel or don't feel inside. And by the time they finally understand, it's often too late. Because you've already learned how to give yourself the love and validation you once gave so freely to them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back and let your absence do the work. At first, he thinks he's fine. He tells himself he's moving on, that he's too busy to think about you, too occupied to notice the silence where you used to be. He fills his calendar with distractions, nights out with his friends, endless scrolling through his phone, maybe even dates with people he barely knows. On the surface, it looks like he's thriving, but here's the truth. He's not replacing you, he's avoiding the void you left behind. Because it's easy for him to believe he's okay when his attention is scattered. When he's laughing at a joke over dinner or getting validation from someone new, it's easy to convince himself that nothing's missing. But late at night, when the noise fades and he's left with nothing but his own thoughts, that's when the cracks begin to show. He starts to realize that these new people, no matter how exciting or different they seem at first, don't really understand him. They don't know his quirks, his fears, or the little habits he thought nobody noticed, but you did. He looks for you in their eyes, in their words, in their touch, and every time he comes up empty. Because it's not you. It's never you. What he doesn't realize yet is that connection isn't something you can just manufacture. You can't swap one soul for another and expect it to feel the same. You left an imprint, the way you made him feel, seen, desired, challenged, alive. That doesn't just disappear. It's not replaceable. And when he reaches for that feeling in someone else, he'll discover that no one brings it the way you did. That's why he reaches for that feeling in someone else. He'll discover that no one brings it the way you did. At first, he'll deny this to himself. His pride won't let him admit that he misses you. He'll call it boredom or nostalgia or even loneliness. He'll say, "It's just a phase. I'll get over it." But deep down, something stirs. It's not just that he misses you, it's that he misses himself when he was with you. He misses the way you made him want to be better, the way you sparked a part of him that he didn't even know existed before you came along. He'll keep trying to fill that space. Maybe he'll swipe through a dozen faces, have shallow conversations, chase fleeting moments of excitement, but nothing sticks. Nothing feels real. Every comparison, every disappointment brings him closer to the truth. You weren't just another person in his life. You were the one who made it feel full. And here's where it really hits him. You made him, he remembers how much he felt when he was with you. The comfort, the excitement, even the arguments that came from caring so deeply. He starts to realize that the people he's meeting now don't challenge him, don't inspire him, don't see through him the way you did. He feels the difference, and it scares him. That's when the regret creeps in. He begins replaying moments he thought he'd forgotten. The way you smiled when you were genuinely happy, the way you called him out when he was being less than he could be, the way you believed in him even when he didn't deserve it. Those memories aren't just thoughts anymore. They're reminders of what he lost. And here's the part he never saw coming. By the time he realizes this, you've already grown. You're not sitting around waiting for his clarity. You've been investing in yourself, healing, becoming stronger and more radiant than ever before. The version of you that exists now doesn't even need the validation he once withheld. That's when he feels it fully. The ache of wanting something he can't reach anymore. He thought he was fine without you, but now he sees the truth. He's not fine. He's not fulfilled. Because nothing he's found since you can compare to the depth of what he had with you. And in that moment, as the weight of his choices sinks in, he understands losing you wasn't just a chapter closing, it was the end of a story he'll never get back. Here's the part no one tells you. By the time he realizes what he lost, you won't even be standing in the same place anymore. You won't be the same person he left behind. See, people always assume that the one who walked away has the power, that they're the one in control because they chose to leave or because they acted like they didn't need you. But the truth is, their sense of power is temporary. It only lasts as long as you don't realize how much stronger you can become when you're not busy trying to hold someone in your life who isn't fighting for you. What happens next is fascinating. In the beginning, he thinks he's fine. He fills his days with distractions, maybe even convinces himself he's happier. But there's always a moment, maybe weeks later, maybe months, when he pauses and notices something is missing. Sees your name. And for a second, he thinks about reaching out, but pride stops him. He tells himself, no, I'm good. She's probably moved on anyway. And so he stays silent. What he doesn't realize is that while he's stuck in that tug of war between his ego and his heart, you're not frozen in time waiting for him. You're growing. You're healing. You're building a life that excites you again. You start to pour into yourself the energy you once poured into him. You rediscover your value, not because someone told you to, but because you were forced to remember who you were before you ever needed his validation. And here's the irony. That's exactly when he begins to feel the full weight of what he let go. He remembers how you made him feel, seen, understood, desired, in a way no one else ever did. He starts comparing everyone new to you, and none of them measure up. That laugh he thought he could replace, he can't. That connection he assumed would just happen again, it doesn't. And the more he realizes this, the more he feels the loss. Not just of you, but of the version of himself he got to be when he was with you. But by then, something has shifted. You've stepped into your power. You're no longer the person who would have picked up the phone at midnight just because he suddenly remembered how much you meant to him. You're no longer waiting for crumbs of affection from someone who didn't recognize your worth the first time around. You've built standards. You've found your balance. You've learned that peace feels better than chasing someone who wasn't ready to receive your love. That's when he reaches out. It might be a simple text. Hey, I've been thinking about you, can we talk? Or maybe it's longer, full of apologies and admissions he never had the courage to make before. And for a brief moment, the part of you that once longed to hear those words stirs. But you don't respond the way you would have months ago. You don't crumble. You don't rush back. Because deep down, you know the truth. The version of you he's looking for doesn't exist anymore. You've evolved. This is the moment where all the work you've done on yourself pays off. Because now you get to choose, not from a place of desperation, but from strength. And whether you decide to give him another chance or to keep moving forward without him, the choice is yours. That is real power. He thought he'd be fine without you. He thought you'd always be there if he changed his mind. But he didn't count on you outgrowing him. He didn't count on you becoming someone who doesn't need him anymore. And that's when it hits him. Not just the regret of losing you, but the realization that the door he thought would always be open has quietly, gracefully closed. And that's why you never chase someone who isn't ready to value you, because one day they'll look for you and they won't be able to find you in the person you've become.